Hey everybody, today I'm down in Southern California with my new favorite half-ton truck, the GMC Sierra. For 2022, it's received a pretty significant interior refresh, a few minor engine changes under the hood, and a new Ultimate trim. So you could also say that this is the ultimate half-ton truck in America. Well, Denali Ultimate at least. In addition to the new Ultimate trim, there is also a new AT4X trim for 2022. That's the most off-road expression of Sierra. I'm going to be talking about that a little bit later in this video, and I'm going to be taking that one off-road. But let's talk about the Denali Ultimate first. Up front, we have blacked out chrome sections rather than the bright chrome that we find in other Sierra models, full LED headlights, and I think a much more attractive look than we find in the Silverado. Be sure to let me know what you think about that. Down here at the bottom of the bumper, we do have metal bumper sections, although they are body color painted like the plastic bits just above. There are a number of reasons that the Sierra is my favorite half-ton truck. It was already pretty high on my list. Honestly, what always kept this out of the absolute top slot was the interior, which, let's be honest, was dreadful before and has turned over a new leaf and has gone from the worst in the segment to, hands down, the best interior available in a half-ton truck. But let's talk a little bit more about the Denali Ultimate. It's only going to come in the form you see it here. So big cab, short box behind. If you want a longer box and you want a Denali, you'll have to get the less Ultimate trim. Also unique to the Denali Ultimate are these 22-inch wheels, which definitely are enormous and have sort of a snowflake theme, but they do have a lot of black on them, which means they're going to be a little bit more difficult to keep clean. There are a lot of reasons to buy a pickup truck, but obviously cargo practicality is high among them. And this is an area where I think the Sierra and now the new Silverado really rises above the competition, and most of that has to do with this multi-pro tailgate. Even though this does have the short box on it, it is more practical than a number of other short boxes from the competition, thanks to the way that this tailgate folds down. If, for instance, you have longer items and you need them to be able to hang out of the tailgate but sort of tip in there, you can put the tailgate in this format. You can pull open this little slot and then it will retain longer items inside the tailgate, making them easier to strap down. You can, of course, also open the tailgate like a normal tailgate like that. Then you can hit the other button in there and then lower it in this position and use it like a large sturdy step. This is definitely a lot easier to use than the step that we find coming out of the F-150's tailgate, for instance. There are also tailgate steps on each side of the integrated bumper. You can get an optional audio system inside that portion of the multi-pro tailgate if you want. It is a little bit heavier than I might like, so it's a little bit unwieldy to open one-handed and close one-handed, but the functionality is something that I really appreciate. GM has also had a really strong focus on towing tech lately. So back here we have 2 camera inputs and a 7-pin wiring harness connection for the trailer, 2-inch receiver down below. This allows you to put a camera inside the trailer so you can see what your load is up to, or if your load is a horse, for instance, you can see how your animals are behaving. And then you can put a camera on the back of your trailer so when you're backing up the entire combination, you can see what's behind the trailer and behind the truck. If you tow frequently, one important thing to keep in mind about the multi-pro tailgate is that it is really cool, but this portion of the tailgate can end up hitting your hitch and hitting the ball if you like to keep them attached to your truck. If you're not paying attention, like I have actually done in a GMC Sierra that I have borrowed, you can end up bopping it. For me at least, this is where my hitch ended up hitting, so it didn't damage the body of the vehicle. This is where the buttons are located for the multi-pro tailgate, upper section, lower section, and then the 2 different cameras here for 360-degree camera view and then hitch view. With the tailgate down, let's talk about the bed itself. This is GM's new carbon fiber pickup bed. We're only going to see it in the top end trims of Sierra at the moment. Unlike a bed liner, there is no aluminum or steel backing on this carbon fiber bed. The carbon fiber is strong enough and light enough to do the job all on its own. It's going to be more durable than an aluminum bed or a steel bed would be, and it's going to be a lot lighter than having an aluminum bed or a steel bed and then a different liner. It's also more space efficient. You can see the eccentric shape here. It means that the cargo volume of this bed is higher than a traditional pickup truck bed because it can be a lot closer to the sheet metal on the outside. I was first able to experience this bed in prototype form. Since then, we now have final texturing on the bed itself, so you can see this helps keep things from sliding around. Otherwise, it would be pretty slick. Up there at the front of the bed, we have lots of different cargo tie downs, 3 on each side, 2 right there in front behind the cab, and then 3 additional ones on each side of the rear. You can see that we have the inverter outlet over there on the passenger side, and then on the driver's side, we have the helper handle that helps you climb into the truck bed when you're using the multi-pro tailgate. As you might have guessed, GM picked their 2 best engines for use in the Ultimate trim. Things start out with a 3-liter inline-6 turbo diesel that is going to be the standard engine in here. It produces 277 horsepower and 460 pound-feet of torque. The interesting thing about this inline-6 diesel is that it's the only small diesel available in a half-ton truck that was designed from the ground up to be used in a pickup truck. And the result of that is it's the only one that's going to give you a reasonable amount of engine braking. If, for instance, you were to take a look at a Ram 1500 pickup truck with its 3-liter diesel, it's very fuel efficient, it's also pretty peppy, but it doesn't really have a lot of engine braking. And that does mean that keeping control of your trailer in long downhill runs is a bit trickier. This engine is the optional 6.2-liter V8. It's $1,105 in the Denali Ultimate. It produces 420 horsepower and 460 pound-feet of torque. It's mated to the same 10-speed automatic transmission. If you're checking out the other trims of Sierra for 2022, there's also an available 5.3-liter V8 producing 355 horsepower and a new 2.7-liter turbo 4-cylinder engine that has been significantly redesigned versus last year. It now produces 310 horsepower and a whopping 430 pound-feet of torque, so nearly as much power as this 6.2-liter V8. The new Ultimate trim has one of the most comfortable seats available in a half-ton truck and the most adjustable seat you've ever seen in a GMC Sierra. In addition to 4-way adjustable lumbar support, these controls down here also control the available massage functionality, inflatable side bolsters, and an inflatable seat back cushion in the shoulder area to basically help change the curvature of the seat itself. We also have a 4-way adjustable steering column, 2-position memory over there on the driver's door, and the front passenger seat has the same range of motion as the driver's seat. As you'd expect in a modern half-ton truck, there is tons of room back here. The driver's seat's adjusted for me at 6 feet tall. You can say I have about 7 inches of legroom left, and headroom is pretty massive. If you come in close here, you can see that the ceiling really dishes up here right behind the optional moonroof. It's of course standard in the Ultimate, and that gives us lots of real-world headroom. Now, if I do want to put my head all the way to the back, then it sort of dishes in right there. Moving all the way over to the right, the front seat's all the way back in its tracks. You can see I still have several inches of legroom left. A lot of really nice touches back here in this cabin as well. You'll see that we have heated rear seats, USB charge ports in the center console, the same quality leather that we found up front, and lots of little attractive details like the embossed topographical maps on the backs of the front seat cushions and on the backs of the rear seat back cushions as well. Then, like we see in other GM trucks, there's a hidey hole back there so that way you can stash your stash. And you can lift up the rear seat for a little bit of additional storage in this area, but it doesn't open and close like we find in some of the competition. Not every vehicle with a flat floor is an EV. We have an essentially flat floor back here in most modern pickup trucks as well. You can see that there is just a very slight hump right there. I'm kind of surprised that GM didn't give us one floor mat right across the back. And starting out our interior look, let's talk about the rear door panels. They have the same sort of attention to detail and the same soft touch materials that we find on the front door panels. Real wood trim, lots of leather and stitched goods going on here. The same sort of embossing that we found on the seat backs as well. Now you will find harder plastics down at the bottom of the door to help improve durability. Obviously, as we look around this interior, keep in mind that we are in the Ultimate trim. We have a pretty standard sized moonroof just over the driver and front passengers' heads, so nothing crazy going on here, no panoramic moonroof. And from here you can really see how that roof line is shaped. You can see that really dishes down there for that opening section and then back up to improve rear seat headroom. The driver and front passenger get height adjustable shoulder belts. I am surprised that we don't see 4-way adjustable headrests, however. These just adjust for height. There's an Ultimate badge on that seat back. You can see lots of contrasting piping and this tricolor design where we have a nutty brown section in the middle, white piping, and then charcoal around the side. More of that embossed treatment there on the seat back. Perforated inserts on the seat back and seat bottom cushion because these seats are both heated and ventilated. Be sure to let me know what you think about the stitching design in here. This kind of reminds me of either maybe a baseball glove or sort of Nightmare Before Christmas and some of those stitched together animals. We find the same design over here on the driver and front passengers' doors. Again, more of that embossed treatment going on. Really a lot of texturing and a lot of premium materials in here. And then, of course, more of that wood trim up top. Lots of Ultimate badges in here as well. They really want you to not forget which model you chose. Moving over to the dashboard, yet again, more of that topographic map stuff going on here. This time, it is actually burnt into the wood panel right here for this upper glove box. Moving the trim panel around, you can really see the wood variation in the light and, of course, that treatment over there with that topographic map. This is the upper glove compartment section. We then have a lower glove compartment right there and a slightly bigger storage bin than we find in the F-150 currently, so you could fit some smaller tablet computers inside. This is the button to open the upper glove box section. The interior changes are more than just the wood panel that we find on this Ultimate trim. Most of the Sierra lineup gets an entirely new interior. In this particular trim, of course, we have the most premium materials like a stitched leather upper section of the dash with, again, more of that contrasting piping and stitching there. This interesting trim section running right across that's meant to look like knurled metal. It is, in fact, plastic. Again, stitched materials down there at the bottom of the dash. Lots of really soft touch premium materials on the sides of the center console as well. And then the entire dashboard styling is very different. Let's just pan right across so you can see everything together. New LCDs on the driver's side and in the center console. And these two LCDs are going to be standard in a wide variety of trims. Really, just the base model is not going to get this dual screen setup. The star of this interior has to be this new large horizontal touchscreen in the middle of the dashboard. This is running Google's Android Automotive operating system, pretty similar to what we find in the GMC Hummer, although adapted slightly differently for the Sierra. You may have also seen this software in the current Volvo lineup and the Polestar lineup, but honestly, GM has done a much better job of integrating it into the vehicle and really filling out the features more than we've seen in those other implementations. So for instance, we have Apple CarPlay here and Android Auto, features that we don't find in those other implementations just yet. The software is also pretty snappy. If you're a fan of Google Maps on your smartphone or on your desktop computer, you're going to love this implementation. We have things like live traffic displays right there, natural voice commands in the system. When you've signed in with your Google account, it's also going to remember recent searches from your desktop or your smartphone. And it pulls down live data from the cloud. So for instance, if we hit this button, find me a gas station. Not only is it going to find you gas stations, but once we actually get the list here, so we have a bunch of them here, let's go find out one more about this Chevron here. You can see that this Chevron has $6.10 regular gasoline. Ouch, that's expensive. So you can use that to hunt around maybe for some cheaper gas too. You can see that there are some cheaper options. Keep in mind, of course, we are in Southern California right now, so gas is going to be pretty expensive. But hey, there's a Valero only 8 minutes away that is $5.66. The natural voice commands can also be used for things like adjusting the climate control. Set the temperature to 70 degrees. The rest of the infotainment system is pretty self-explanatory, but I want to talk about some of the trailering features because this is something that General Motors has done a really good job with. Now, rather unfortunately, on this vehicle, I don't have a trailer connected with all the fancy cameras, so I can't show you everything, but this is going to function very similar to the last generation, only with a snappier, clearer LCD. You can use the vehicle or the smartphone app to activate the lights on your trailer, so that way you can check the trailer lights and connectivity yourself. You literally would have an app on your smartphone, you would just click next, 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 and it would run through the various lights on the trailer, make sure they're connected. The camera views would allow you to again see what's inside the trailer, so say if your animals are having problems back there, you'd know that that's happening, and it would allow you to have an invisible trailer view where while you're driving down, you can have a view behind the trailer right here on this LCD. A little bit different than the onboard skills that we find in the F-150 that actually uses load cells. This will tell you have overrun your GCW if you have a trailer connected based on the engine and torque being applied. So it's a little bit less accurate, but it's still going to give you that same functionality. Then, of course, we just have the incredible number of cameras on this vehicle. 360-degree camera display, multiple different ways you can access the camera, so front and rear camera views. You can take a look down the front, you can take a look down the rear, you can look down the side of the vehicle, front and rear, you can take a look at that hitch for better alignment, and you can view a number of these camera views while you're in motion. So if you're the kind of person that wants to say, gee, am I dragging a safety chain, you can hit back there to that view and you can check it out. There's also a camera on the back of the cab so you can see what's bopping around in your bed, so that way you don't, for instance, damage an air compressor that's back there like I've done in the past, and then you can turn on and off the guidelines for your trailer assistance. Below the touchscreen, we find the engine start-stop button, the new dual-zone climate control buttons and switches here. We find controls for the heated and ventilated seats, heated steering wheel, and then a row of toggles down here at the bottom. These are for things like the lane departure warning in this vehicle, parking sensors, etc. Now, these buttons will change based on the trim, and some vehicles will have blanks. One interesting touch is we do have a button to lower all the windows simultaneously. We then have a large storage area here that is not a cell phone charging location, however. 2 USB ports. This vehicle does not need a USB connection, however, for CarPlay. It is wireless, and there is a really well-sized slot right there for your smartphone. And one thing I really like is that my phone will charge even through this thicker case right there in that slot. That's something that not all vehicles do well. 2 large cup holders there. We have the joystick style shifter here. There's an unlock button that side. Pull it back, push it forward for reverse. Park is the button on top. Interesting location for the trailer brake controller. I'm not sure quite how I feel about that there because some things might end up spilling on that, etc., but it is really easy to find. Between the front seats, we find a padded armrest, yet more topographical information, 2 cup holders back there for the rear passengers, and that opens to reveal a very large storage area. Inside the storage area, we find 2 additional USB ports, and General Motors will let you connect your smartphone and integrate it with the system on any of the 4 USB ports up front. On the driver's side, we find a full LCD instrument cluster, and as we've seen from General Motors for a while when they do full LCDs, this is more configurable than the competition. The forward LCD, for instance, even in the new F-150 Lightning, doesn't really change its theme too much, and in here we have 4 different views. There's that progressive view. I kind of like the digital view here a little bit more. And then if you want a little bit less information on the screen to kind of weed out some of the distraction, you can go for a very clean look. Some of the information is duplicated, so you can actually have the same information displayed on both sides at the same time, and then there are a few things that are only available on the right side or the left side. The center of the LCD can also give you turn-by-turn navigation directions, and the lower portion of the display can be configured with an expanded or a contracted set of additional gauges. As far as the drivetrain goes, this has the same 3-liter diesel or the same 6.2-liter V8 that we found last year. No mechanical changes there, so the 0 to 60 times are likely going to be the same as before. Now, the 2.7-liter turbo, that is definitely swifter than before, but as I said, it still has the 8-speed automatic transmission. I'm really intrigued to get that 2.7-liter turbo back at home so I can run that through a battery of comparisons and tests, because it appears that fuel economy is excellent. Other than the 3-liter diesel, all the engines in the Sierra lineup offer cylinder deactivation to improve fuel economy, and this system is different than the one that you might have heard of before because it doesn't turn off the same 4 cylinders every time. In fact, it doesn't always turn off 4 cylinders. This can run on 1 cylinder, 2 cylinders, 3 cylinders, all the way on up to 8 cylinders, and it will do so in patterns, so that way it's really unnoticeable to the driver. This vehicle is always adjusting the number of cylinders that it's using, and honestly, you'd be hard-pressed to ever know. Of course, I'm out on the highway because the big thing is that the Sierra gets Super Cruise this year, and it's even changing lanes for me. So it's decided that the traffic in front of me is going too slowly, it wants to move over, and so it just went ahead and turned on the turn signal and changed lanes. I didn't have to do anything about it. The big thing with Super Cruise versus Blue Cruise, which we do find on some available Ford trucks, is that this is a much smoother system. This also gets the latest version of Super Cruise, so it's not hobbled in terms of its functionality. It's going to operate on up to about 200,000 miles of roadways across North America, so about double what we find in Ford's Blue Cruise system, and it's a lot smoother about its operation and definitely more consistent in the way that it maintains its position in the lanes. Let's see how it handles, for instance, that Lincoln cutting in. It actually felt pretty smooth. The other interesting thing that Super Cruise does is it will adjust your position in the lane based on traffic around you. So if there's a large vehicle, for instance, to your right or to your left, and they're really hugging that lane line, it's actually going to shift you over in the lanes. That way it feels a bit more natural. The biggest thing to remember about Super Cruise, however, is that this is the system that's had the most time in the oven. The Ford system and the Lexus system, honestly, they come across as half-baked. Some of that has to do with the actual behavior on the road, and some of it has to do with the way that it relays information to you as the driver. This little light right here on the top of the steering wheel, that is a big innovation and something that we do not find in the Ford system. With the Ford system, it just changes colors on the cluster. It doesn't really tell you, hey, you need to take over, and there are situations where you really need to know that you need to take over. With the Ford system, sometimes it will disengage, but the lane centering will still be on, so you're just tootling down the road, and then all of a sudden you realize, wow, Blue Cruise actually hasn't been running for a while. That same thing does not happen with the Super Cruise system. Now, the other thing you're going to notice since we're out on the open highway is the improved ride quality that we find in the Denali Ultimate. When this generation of GM's pickup trucks launched, people weren't really that keen, especially on the rear suspension tuning. It was a little bit over firm. They have softened things out a little bit, and then they've made things a little bit different with the Denali, with a unique suspension tune of its very own. As far as ride quality goes, I still give the air suspension that's available in the Ram 1500 higher marks than this, but the difference has narrowed considerably. This is a very, very comfortable suspension setup, and I do like this more than what we find currently in the F-150. As far as cabin noise goes, as you'd expect in a modern truck, the cabin is definitely fairly quiet. That's thanks to a lot of isolation between the frame and the body and a serious dedication to sound deadening, especially in this top-end trim. Fuel economy, that's a little bit difficult to divine, but in previous reviews of the Silverado and the Sierra, fuel economy has been excellent thanks to the cylinder skipping system. This is a pretty powerful 6.2-liter V8 engine, but we actually get fuel economy that is substantially similar in real-world driving to the much less powerful 5.3. Generally speaking, out on the open highway, you might get better fuel economy in some of the twin-turbo engines that we find in the Ford lineup, but if you're doing a lot of regular towing, the difference is not going to be very large. And if you want the best fuel economy in a half-ton truck without the worry of a hybrid system, you're going to want the 3-liter inline-6. One last thing I should mention out on the road is that this generation of Super Cruise is designed with trailering in mind. So if you're the kind of person that does lots of long-distance highway journeys, that could really be an important feature. Hold on to your hats, folks, because the Denali Ultimate has the ultimate GMC price tag, starting at $80,395. That is $5,000 more expensive than the regular Denali. Now, fortunately, that's right about where the Denali Ultimate also stops, because there are only 2 options to choose from. Just over $1,100 for the 6.2-liter V8 engine, and then you choose your paint color. To be honest, I would choose the base 3-liter turbo diesel, because I love that engine. It's pretty peppy, it has a high level of torque, same amount of torque we find out of the 6.2-liter engine, only a really healthy torque curve. Fuel economy is high, Towing ability is also high because GM has drastically improved the towing ability on that 3-liter diesel for 2022. And unlike the 3-liter turbo diesel that we find in the Ram pickup truck, I would tow heavier loads in a mountainous climate with this turbo diesel because it has the ability to do engine braking. It actually has exhaust brake functionality on that engine, and it is a significant improvement over what we find in the Ram. Clearly, the turbo diesel isn't going to sound as good as the 6.2-liter V8, and it's not going to have the same kind of acceleration that we find in this model, but it is going to be less expensive, and it's going to be less thirsty on those longer road trips as well. But importantly, you don't need to get the ultimate trim of the Sierra to get a lot of the functionality that I love in this model. The new dashboard layout, the new infotainment system, and LCD instrument cluster, those are available in much less expensive trims, as is the multi-pro tailgate. The optional carbon fiber bed, I don't know if I need that particular functionality, but I do love all of the trailering tech that we find, again, in most versions of the Sierra. And for me, that's what puts this to the top of my list when it comes to half-ton trucks. The 3-liter diesel is an excellent engine. Honestly, the 5.3-liter V8 is a great mid-level V8 engine as well. If you want the extra power, there is the 6.2. If you want better real-world fuel economy, there's the 2.7-liter turbo, now with increased torque. And then all of the trailering functionality and the interior improvements can be found in pretty much every trim of Sierra that you're going to be interested in. Bottom line at the moment, if you're shopping for a half-ton truck, you should definitely put the Sierra on your shopping list. And of course, stay tuned, because I will have this at home to run it through my usual battery of comparisons and tests just as soon as I can. In the meantime, hit that subscribe button, find me over at Facebook, Instagram, all those other social places, and I'll see all of you next week.